Madhava Kunjabi Hari Madhava Kunjabi Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjabi Hari Gopi Jana Ballabha Girivardhari Gopi Jana Ballabha Girivardhari Jasodanandana Brajajanaranjana Jasodanandana Brajajanaranjana Jasodanandana Brajajanaranjana Yamunatiravana Jadi Yamunatiravana Jadi Kunjabi Hari Madhava Kunjabi Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjabi Hari Jayam Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivajagacharya Astatarasatasi Simad His Divine Grace Sri Bhakti Vedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Gaur Premanandi. Some of you not only came from faraway places, but some of you are sitting far away too. You're welcome to come forward. The chairs move. If you'd like. If you'd like to stay far away, that's okay too. Well, welcome all of you from nearby, far away, and in between. And I think there's going to be a few more people between now and tomorrow also. I had a plan from the Thanksgiving. Part 2. From the Thanksgiving weekend in Houston, Texas, we spent a lot of time preparing and presenting the topic of Madhurya Kandambini. And as I was presenting Madhurya Kandambini, I was thinking a very nice topic for the Vyasa Puja weekend would be a sequel to. So at least two of the topics this evening and tomorrow are part 2 or sequel to or a spin-off of the Madhurya Kandambini topic. And the connection, go ahead, the connection is in the life of Narada Muni, the present life of Narada Muni, the stages of bhakti, the 9 stages of bhakti are identified. We'll go there. And we discussed it at length over Thanksgiving weekend in Madhurya Kandambini. And then we're going to go and expand it from 9 stages to 14 stages. Why not? From Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, the author of Madhurya Kandambini. So that's the topic. And we'll start with this is a title of a Back to Godhead article based upon understandings that come directly from Srimad Bhagavatam, the 3 lives of Narada Muni. In the 7th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, Narada Muni is having a discussion or giving instructions to Vyasadeva, to Yudhisthira. And in that discussion with Yudhisthira, in 6 short verses, he discusses who he was in a previous life. Actually, not just a previous life, a previous day of Brahma. So here goes. Long, long ago in another Mahakalpa, Prabhupada's word millennium or day of Brahma, Kalpa, Veda, I existed as a Gandharva known as Upabarhana. I was very respected by the other Gandharvas. He was a good Gandharva. He's a good singer, a good musician. Some people are good at that. He was good at that. And I had a beautiful face and a pleasing, attractive bodily structure, decorated with flower garlands and sandalwood pulp. I was most pleasing to the women of my city. Thus I was bewildered and always feeling lusty desires. It's not a good beginning. He had a problem. Once there was a Sankirtan festival to glorify the Supreme Lord. They were Vaishnavas. In an assembly of demigods. And the Gandharvas and Apsaras, singers and dancers, were invited by the Prajapatis to take part in it. The illustration is the Prajapatis and the singers and dancers having a festival. Being invited to that festival, I also joined. And surrounded by women, I began musically singing the glories of the demigods, although it's a Vaishnava event. Because of this, the Prajapatis, the great demigods in charge of the affairs of the universe, forcefully cursed me with these words. Because you have committed an offense, may you immediately become a Shudra, devoid of beauty. Sure enough, immediately. Although I took birth as a Shudra from the womb of a maidservant, I engaged in the service of Vaishnavas who were well versed in Vedic knowledge. Consequently, in this life, I got the opportunity to take birth as the son of Lord Brahma. So, if Yudhishthira didn't know, or the rest of us didn't know, that's who he was before he was the maidservant's son. And then his life as the maidservant's son before he became Narada Muni is discussed in Canto 1, Chapter 5. So we're going to discuss Canto 1, Chapter 5. But it's also discussed in Madhurya Kandambini. For those of you that didn't attend, and even those that did attend, a little review, Madhurya Kandambini is an exposition on 2 verses. And not only Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur wrote a book on those 2 verses, but many acharyas have written because it's fundamental. The stages of bhakti and the stages of unfolding of bhakti up to the prema stage. Lots of commentary to expand on those 2 essential verses, which we discussed in the Madhurya Kandambini seminar. Here's a little summary of what we discussed. You see the verse numbers. Canto 1, Chapter 5, verses 23 through 31. Mini summary. This is 13 classes compressed in 1 page. The practical application of these verses, those 2 verses of Rupa, is seen in the life story of Narada in his previous birth as the son of a maidservant. First, he obtained the association of the Munis, which led to the development of Shraddha, text 23. Then he continued to associate with them and rendered service to them, 24. This cleansed his heart of impurities and he attained fixity, nishtha, 25. As he went on hearing from the Munis in a regular manner, he developed ruchi. He's a little boy with no qualification at all. Just didn't even know his father is. At least there's no mention of who his father is. And his mother's a maidservant. Nothing to brag about. So he's an obscure kind of nobody. But he went on hearing from them, and came quickly, because this is just the 4 months of the rainy season, and then the autumn season following the rainy season. So it's a short period of time. He was in the fast lane. Narada continued to describe his progress to the point of asakti, which led finally to the attainment of bhava. And lots of details in between. So these verses come in a section of Srimad Bhagavatam, where Vyasa Dev, pictured here, he's in the Himalayas, pictured behind him, having compiled all the Vedas and so forth and so on, feeling despondent. And then Narada Muni, in his uncanny way of knowing where to show up, what to say, what to do, how to fix the problem, Narada Muni visited his disciple. And the discussion that ensued is Narada describing to Vyasa his previous life and the stages of bhakti that his previous life went through. And he was describing his life as the son of a maidservant. So that's the second life, and then the Narada life. So we already heard in 1 page, the 9 stages of bhakti are narrated by Narada. Now he's not saying this stage, that stage, but the acharyas are saying this is indicating this stage, that is indicating that stage, and so forth. The 9 stages of bhakti are illustrated by the life of Narada as the maidservant's son. However, the very same author that wrote a book on the 9 stages of bhakti, also in one commentary, he writes there's 14 stages of bhakti instead of 9. So that's our topic this evening. Just following him, we'll go through the narration of the 14. There you see the verse. This is in his commentary on 1-21 Bhagavatam. And then when he goes through the 1-5, 23, etc., he states explicitly which of these 14 is found in this verse, and found in that verse, and found in that verse. So that's what we're going to be doing. Anybody lost already? Should I go over something? You're all with me. That's good. That's good. Okay. Let's go forward. Here's the 14. Now, I'll summarize, identify. So this is the Sanskrit found in that purport of 1-21. Mercy. Number 2, service. Mahatseva. Faith. Now, faith in the 9 of Rupa Goswami, Adau Shraddha. So he has a slightly different sequence, but you'll see as we go along, it amounts to the same. Especially tomorrow morning, you'll see it amounts to the same. Then surrender to Guru, Guru Padashraya. Desire for worship or desire for hearing, this is strong desire to continue to engage in bhajan, hearing from these sages. Bhakti, the desire for bhakti. And then the rest is the same list, anartha nivritti, and so forth. Up to prema, that makes 12 instead of 9. And then he adds to the 12, 13 and 14. Seeing the Supreme Lord, experiencing the sweetness of the Lord. Now the way that Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur describes this is they're subsets of prema. So he's just unpacking prema, how you can unpack prema, but that's what he does. So we're going to go following in the footsteps of Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur while going through these verses. That's very simply, it's Narada speaking to Vyasa, explaining his life as a son of a maidservant and how he went to these 14 stages, or 9 stages, went to Prema Bhakti. So here's verse 23. In the previous day of Brahma, before my present birth as Narada, I was born as the son of a maidservant, engaged in the service of Brahmanas who were following the principles of Vedanta. I hear some voices somewhere. What is it? Is it recording or someone talking or what's going on? Somebody will find out. Okay, this is how this is Narada to Vyasa describing what he was in his previous life and what he did. So there's his mother, there's the sages, brahmanas. Now the detail is there were Bhakti Vedantas, there were sadhus, that during the 4 months of the rainy season, they were guests at the homes of brahmanas, because these men that are pictured on the left, and then in the next slide, they're wearing saffron, they're renunciates, staying in the homes or as guests of brahmanas, who are grahastas. And while he was there, Living together in the 4 months of the rainy season, I was engaged in their personal service. Personal service is indicating what, bringing their meals that his mother cooked, and washing their clothes, and this and that, and things that little boys can do to help as service to some sadhus. Although they were impartial by nature, those followers of Vedanta blessed me with their causeless mercy. As far as I was concerned, I was self-controlled and had no attachment for sports, even though I was a boy. In addition, I was not naughty. Now, what boys are not naughty? And I did not speak more than required. I know some boys that don't speak more than required. But naughty? So here's Vishwanath Chakravarti. So this verse, he has his own way of translating the verse. This is the BBT version, or Prabhupada's version. Here's his version of the verse. Though the sages saw everything equally, they showed mercy to me, by which I, though a boy, developed a sense control, gave up child play and all agitation, became obedient, served attentively, and spoke little. He was a good student. And his commentary, Tika. Those who are beyond the influence of the material world show mercy without such causes. Causes means because somebody has this qualification, that qualification, etc. They show mercy. And if they don't have those qualifications, they don't show their mercy. So these were sages that didn't discriminate in that way. Beyond the influence of the material world, show mercy without such causes, without dependence on seeing material qualities, since they see everything in the material world as the same. Now this is his commentary on this verse 24, and then he comments in his commentary from the previous reference, the first 4 of the 14. We're going to keep track of 14. The next one has 5. 4 plus 5 makes 9, right? Usually. The first 4 stages of bhakti are understood here. Mercy of the devotees, service to the devotees, faith, and taking shelter of Guru. Guru Padashraya, that's his language. So next verse, number 25. Once only by their permission, I took the remnants of their food, and by so doing, all my sins were at once eradicated. Thus being engaged, I became purified in heart. And at that time, the very nature of the transcendentalists became attractive to me. Now he's going to unpack this with 5 additional of the 14 items. She, Radha Shamas Puja. This is his translation, or Bhanu Swami's translation of his translation. One time only, I happened to eat their food remnants with their permission. All obstacles to bhakti disappeared by that. Having developed an inclination for bhakti, that's another one of the 5 items in this verse. Having developed an inclination for bhakti, being pure in mind, taste, there's another stage, taste for devotional processes inevitably developed in my mind. So he's just a little boy, doing what little boys do, but having an opportunity to serve sadhus and hearing from the sadhus and so forth. So the 5 stages unfold. Having taken their food, I developed without effort bhakti in the form of hearing, chanting, and remembering the Lord continually. I inevitably developed a taste for hearing and chanting in the mind. Then, this verse, 5 stages, additional stages. Desire for worship or hearing, spriha. Bhakti, anartha vritti, nishtha, and ruchi. That was fast. What about us? This be a fallen Gandharva and it's a piece of cake. Oh, Vyasa, in that association, and by the mercy of those great Vedantists, I could hear them describe the attractive activities of Lord Krishna. Thus, listening attentively, my taste, notice there's taste twice, so he's going to take the taste in this case means bhava bhakti, not just ruchi in the sadhana stage. My taste for hearing of the personally guided increased at every step. So here's his translation. Very similar, but highlighting his, there are 2 additional items that are going to manifest. So it's 2 plus the 9 makes 11, right? Good, checking, just checking. By the mercy of the sages, who were chanting about the attractive pastimes of Krishna daily, I heard about Krishna in that place with asakti. Hearing constantly, I then developed rati, which is another term for bhava. Bhava and rati. Bhava means rati, rati means bhava. His commentary, Shraddha, here indicates the 10th stage, or asakti. At every moment, or at hearing every word, I developed rati, or bhava, for Krishna, whose qualities are pleasing to hear. And it's in the Sanskrit of the verse, priya shravasi. Ruchi should here mean rati, the 11th stage, since the stage of ruchi has already been mentioned in the previous verse. So we're doing pretty well. We already now have 11 stages of bhakti in just 4 verses. Pretty good. What about us? Oh, great sage, as soon as I got a taste for the personality of Godhead, my attention to hear of the Lord was unflinching. That's another stage of bhakti. And as my taste developed, I could realize that it was only in my ignorance that I had accepted gross and subtle coverings, for both the Lord and I are transcendental. And his commentary, or his first translation, having attained an excellent taste for the Lord, my intelligence did not waver from the Lord. By my intelligence, I directly experienced that my gross and subtle bodies created by the Lord's material energy were fixed only in the Supreme Lord. Now that's a very advanced stage. Just this morning listening to Srila Prabhupada speak in Bhagavad Gita chapter 4, giving a class explaining, in one sense there's nothing material because that which is called material is from the Supreme Lord, and since it's from the Supreme Lord, it may be an inferior energy, but it's spiritual because it's from the Supreme Lord who's spiritual. Anyway, it's a very advanced stage of devotion, one can see like that. His commentary. Having attained an excellent taste, my intelligence became steadily fixed in the Lord. Previously, the eye and mind were not fixed in the Lord, even by exerting much effort. That is not the case now. with the development of rati, the mind and other senses giving up the practice of fixing themselves on their material sense objects to which they had been long accustomed, became automatically fixed only on the Lord. Thus, I see means directly experience. So he's adding another stage, directly experiencing the Lord. And 28. Thus, during 2 seasons, so it started with the rainy season, now it's the rainy and autumn season, I had the opportunity to hear these great souled sages constantly chant the unadulterated glories of Lord Hari. As the flow of my devotional service began, the coverings of the modes of passion and ignorance vanished. Some of you, I'm sure, you know the verse from Canto 1, Chapter 2. Tadarajas bhava kamalobha dayashi cheta etairanabitam stitvam sattve prasidati. So he's giving himself as the example of the stages of bhakti that are described in Canto 1, Chapter 2. And the verses of Rupa Goswami are taking those verses from Srimad Bhagavatam and capsulizing them in 2 verses. And then they're expanded into 9 and expanded into 14. And, you know, the root of everything, the topmost authority for all of us, followers of Vedas, is the Srimad Bhagavatam. And the Srimad Bhagavatam is but an exposition by Vyasadeva on Vedanta Sutra, which is a summary of all the Vedas. So in other words, you go back and the Vedas is the source. This is something that we did in the Madhurya Kandambani class or seminar. Like, to the point it was maybe oppressive. Because I'm oppressive in the sense that I repeated it several times because I considered it very important, and it was a very keen insight that Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur has regard for Rupa Goswami. Don't back up. Let's go back to Madhurya Kandambani. In Madhurya Kandambani, there's 2 Mangala Charana verses. Mangala Charana, invoking of auspiciousness, Mangala Charana verses. One is glorification of Lord Chaitanya, then that other is glorification of Rupa Goswami, 2. And the one that's glorifying Rupa Goswami says, you know, in not verbatim, but in essence, I offer my respects to Rupa Goswami who, although there were many acharyas prior to him who gave illuminations on the supreme absolute truth personality of Godhead, he alone, Rupa, explained the Supreme Lord as rasa and manifesting rasa in this world, and all truths are understood in that way by the mercy of Rupa Goswami. And just another detail, another nice detail. When Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur was 16, think of somebody you know that's 16. He was 16, he wrote 3 commentaries on Rupa Goswami's writings. You know, he learned his ABCs, he learned his Vyakarana, and then he's like, now after learning Sanskrit grammar, he's studying the Vedas, and while studying the Vedas, his favorite personality was Rupa Goswami. So he wrote commentary on 3 of Rupa Goswami's books at 16 that stood for the rest of his life. Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, it's about Bhakti Rasa. Ujjwala Nilamani, that's like super high. Commentary on Ujjwala Nilamani is like a postgraduate study of Rupa Goswami's Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. And then another book by Rupa Goswami, Laghu Bhagavatamrita. He wrote a commentary on Laghu Bhagavatamrita when he was 16. He loved Rupa Goswami. He understood Rupa Goswami. And in his Mangalacharna, he is indicating the Rupa Goswami gave access to the personality of Godhead through the medium of rasa. That's who the absolute truth is. That's how Madhurya Kandamani is structured. It is how Rupa Goswami's writings are structured, because it's the teachings of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu also, because he came to give prema rasa, or prema bhakti. And it's all packed up in this nice little book, Madhurya Kandamani, in these 2 verses of Rupa Goswami, the stages of bhakti up to prema. Illustrated by Srimad Bhagavatam in the 2nd chapter of Canto 1, etc. So you see, whether you go this way or this way, it's the same thing, looked at from a different perspective, but all in alignment with Guru Sadhu Shastra. So it's really nice. It's like really nice and really safe territory. Become conversant in this, and you're set. So Narada is speaking all this to Vyasa because Vyasa has compiled all the Vedas and he's still feeling despondent. So Vyasa wants to know, why am I feeling this feeling? You haven't sufficiently glorified the personality of Godhead. But he then gives his own story to tell how he became Narada, and he became able to become the spiritual master of a literary incarnation of the personality of Godhead. Shoo, Narada's up there. And here's Vishwanath's commentary on this verse. First, the translation. In this way, for 2 seasons, monsoon and autumn, I constantly heard the pure glories of the Lord chanted by the generous sages. I then developed prema, which destroys rajas and tamas in the jiva. Now that's his rendering. The verses in the Bhagavatam indicate that the diminishing of rajas and tamas begins much earlier, but completely eradicated is in the very mature stage, which follows his Madhurya Kandamani commentary. It is impelled, this is his commentary on this one verse, and then we're through with his commentary for a while. It is implied here that there was destruction of rajas and tamas in others as well who realized devotion to the Lord. This is the 12th stage of bhakti, prema. So he has stages beyond prema, 2 more, but they're just subsets of prema. Direct vision of the Lord and experience of the sweetness will be explained in the next chapter. So stay tuned, don't go away. So this is text 28, and here's just further verses. I was very much attached to those sages. I was gentle in behavior, and all my sins were eradicated in their service. In my heart, I had strong faith in them. I had subjugated the senses, and I was strictly following them with body and mind. As they were leaving, those Bhakti Vedantas, who are very kind to poor-hearted souls, instructed me in that most confidential subject, which is instructed by the personality of Godhead himself. You know, most confidential knowledge, like in Bhagavad Gita. So this picture makes it very clear. He's a little boy. There's his mother in the background doing some service, and they're giving him not only knowledge and encouragement, they give him some practices. So Vyasadeva, this is now the next chapter. Vyasadeva responds, hearing from Narada, what did you do after the departure of the great sages who instructed you in scientific transcendental knowledge before the beginning of your present birth? A few verses later, Narada said, the great sages who had imparted scientific knowledge of transcendence to me departed for other places, And I had to pass my life in this way, means feeling separation from them. Now, the painting is, they're in the Himalayas, they're in the background. There's Narada in his mudra of instructing Vyasa, and Vyasa very happily hearing from Narada. I was the only son of my mother who was not only a simple woman, but a maidservant as well. Since I was her only offspring, she had no other alternative for protection. She bound me with a tie of affection. When I was a mere child of 5 years, I lived in a Brahmana school. So he's the son of a maidservant, but they permitted him, because he had quality, and he was going to school, 5 years old. I was dependent on my mother's affection and had no experience of different lands. And then some misfortune came. Once my poor mother, when going out one night to milk a cow, was bitten on the leg by a serpent influenced by the supreme time, Prabhupada's purport. The poor boy was being looked after only by his affectionate mother, and yet the mother was taken from the world by the supreme will in order to put him completely at the mercy of the Lord. Misfortune becomes fortune, or fortune in the form of misfortune. So how did he respond to the misfortune? I took this as the special mercy of the Lord, who always desires benediction for his devotees. And so thinking, I started for the north. North means the Himalayas. After my departure, I passed through many flourishing metropolises, towns, villages, animal farms, mines, agricultural lands, valleys, flower gardens, nursery gardens, and natural forests. Little boy, 5 years old. He skipped school, too. What did he eat? Because Mama's not going to prepare his breakfast and wash his clothes and, do things that mothers do for little boys. He doesn't have a mother. What does he eat? How does he maintain himself? I then passed along through many forests of rushes, bamboos, reeds, sharp grass, weeds, and caves, which were very difficult to go through alone. I want to stop this thing. It's making dizzy. There's no way to stop it. I visited deep, dark, and dangerously fearful forests, which were the play yard for snakes, owls, and jackals. Thus traveling, I felt tired, both bodily and mentally. And I was both thirsty and hungry. So I took a bath in a river, lake, and also drank water. By contacting water, I got relief from my exhaustion. Now he's traveling. He is a sannyasi. After that, under the shadow of a banyan tree, in an uninhabited forest, I began to meditate upon the super soul situated within, using my intelligence, as I had learned from the liberated souls. So he had a practice, which he learned from them, along with teachings about Krishna. So he had, given tools and given a head start, like some of our devotee children have. And he used it very wisely. As soon as I began to meditate upon the lotus feet of the personality of Godhead, with my mind transformed in transcendental love, tears rolled down my eyes, and without delay the personality of Godhead appeared in the lotus of my heart. Now this has commentary, because this is stage number 13 of 14. His translation of that verse: as I meditated on the lotus feet of the Lord within a mind conquered by prema. Now notice, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur is a Rasika Bhakta. So don't expect him to be otherwise, because he's a Rasika Bhakta. So he sees and he writes and he experiences in that way. So we just have to like he is who he is, because he is. He's a Rasika Bhakta. With a mind conquered by prema, with tears in my eyes from longing, step by step the Lord made his appearance in my mind. And his commentary: as I meditated in the mind, with the mind conquered by prema, the Lord step by step made his appearance before me. Or Shanai can mean that he first appeared in the heart, and then he appeared in three functions of the mind, nose, ears, and eye, so that I could experience the fragrance of his body, sound of his ankle bells, and the beauty of his face. Now these are references to stages of ecstasy in the bhava and prema stage, where the experience of the Lord may appear in predominantly in different senses. Oh, Vyasadeva, at that time, being exceedingly overpowered by feelings of happiness, every part of my body became separately enlivened. This is all a subset of prema bhakti described in Madhurya Kandambani. Being absorbed in an ocean of ecstasy, I could see neither myself nor the Lord. He didn't become a Mayavadi, don't worry. The transcendental form of the Lord, as it is, satisfies the mind's desire and at once erases all mental incongruities. Upon losing that form, I suddenly got up, being perturbed, as is usual when one loses that which is desirable. I desired to see again that transcendental form of the Lord, but despite my attempts to concentrate upon the heart with eagerness to view the form again, I could not see him anymore, and thus dissatisfied, I was very much aggrieved. Remember, he's just off in the forest under a banyan tree in a remote, who knows where place, and all these things happened, and a little boy. Seeing my attempts in that lonely place, the personality of Godhead, who is transcendental to all mundane descriptions, spoke to me with gravity and pleasing words, just to mitigate my grief. Now there's another commentary, Vishwanath. As I endeavored to see him in that lonely place, the Lord, inexpressible by words, then spoke to me with affectionate words, which removed my grief. So here's perfectional stage. I had an experience of his sweet sounding words by my ears, because Narada had bhakti arising from Vaidhi sadhana. This is a detail. It's an important detail. Bhakti can arise spontaneously, or bhakti can arise through practice. Spontaneous is most unusual, but it's certainly a category. And to explain that category in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, Rupa Goswami takes the example of Pingala, who was a prostitute in Mithila, and she became, without regulation, because she was a prostitute, she didn't have regulations, she became an exalted Vaishnavi. And there's a detail of how that happened. It's described by Krishna to Uddhava in the 11th canto Bhagavatam. So she's an example of no regulation, but spontaneous arising of elevated stages of bhakti, bhava bhakti. You can read it, it's in the Bhagavatam, or it's in Madhurya Kandambani. So, but Narada was an example of one who achieved perfection through Vaidhi Bhakti, right here in the purport. he had realization of the sweetness of the Lord's fragrance, beauty, and speech in his present body. The complete experience with all other types of sweetness, touch, taste, etc., would be experienced in the future in a spiritual body. It's very comprehensive. So that's text 20. Here's 21. Oh, Narada. This is the Lord speaking to him. I regret that during this lifetime you will not be able to see me anymore. Those who are incomplete in service and who are not completely free from all material taints can hardly see me. O virtuous one, you have only once seen my person, and this is just to increase your desire for me, because the more you hanker for me, the more you'll be freed from all material desires. And now going on to text 23 of chapter 6. By the service of the Absolute Truth, even for a few days, a devotee attains firm and fixed intelligence in me. Consequently, he goes on to become my associate in the transcendental world after giving up the present deplorable material worlds. That's text 23. We're going to jump to 25. Then, that supreme authority, personified by sound and unseen by eyes, but most wonderful, stopped speaking. There's supposed to be some sound effects. Feeling a sense of gratitude, I offered my obeisances unto him, bowing my head. Thus I began chanting the holy name and fame of the Lord by repeated recitation, ignoring all formalities of the material world. Such chanting and remembering, remember this is the previous day of Brahma. Such chanting and remembering of the transcendental pastimes of the Lord are all benedictory. By so doing, I traveled all over the earth, fully satisfied and free from pride and envy. He's a perfected soul now. In due course of time, I, who was fully absorbed in thinking of Krishna, and who therefore had no attachments, being completely freed from all material taints, met with death as lightning and illumination occur simultaneously. Now, interestingly, the artist has illustrated that when the soul left the body, he's got his vina already. Pretty good. Because he gets his vina later. But anyway, artist's license. Having been awarded a transcendental body, so now it's a transcendental body, Siddhadeha, befitting an associate of the personality of Godhead, I quit the body made of 5 material elements and thus all acquired fruitive results from work stopped. Then what? At the end of the millennium, means the day of Brahma, when the personality of Godhead, Lord Narayana, lay down within the water of devastation, Brahma began to enter into him along with all creative elements, and I also entered through his breathing. After 4,300,000 solar years, when Brahma awoke to create again by the will of the Lord, all the rishis like Rishi Angira, Atri, and so on were created from the transcendental body of the Lord, and I also appeared along with them. Narada. Since then, by the grace of the Almighty Vishnu, I traveled everywhere without restriction, both in the transcendental world and in the three divisions of the material world. This is because I am fixed in unbroken devotional service of the Lord. So he can go anywhere, do anything at any time, and he frequently does whatever he wants and goes wherever he wants. He has a big leash. He has complete freedom. And thus I travel constantly singing the transcendental message of the glories of the Lord, vibrating this instrument called the veena, which is charged with transcendental sound, which was given to me by Lord Krishna. I'll say it again. We got a little distracted. Krishna gave him his veena. And his veena makes transcendental sound as transcendental as Krishna is, because it's Krishna's veena given to Narada. The musical stringed instrument called veena, this is Prabhupada's purport to this verse, which was handed to Narada by Lord Sri Krishna, as described in the Linga Purana, and this is confirmed by Srila Jiva Goswami. This transcendental instrument is identical with Lord Sri Krishna and Narada, because all of them are the same transcendental category. It's a detail. Items that are used in Krishna's service, there's a nice Sanskrit name, tadiya. Tadiya means paraphernalia. So like on the altar, there's a conch shell, there's a bell, there's an incense holder, there's a chamara, there's a this and there's a that. And all of that is considered tadiya. It's paraphernalia. Nice English word. It's worshipable. It's as worshipable as the deity. Although the deity is whatever the deity is made of, material elements, by the process of installation, through proper procedure, mantras, etc., the transcendental form of the Lord becomes invested with the potencies of the Supreme Lord to act as the Supreme Lord, as spiritual as the Supreme Lord is. And paraphernalia that's used in the service becomes similarly spiritualized. Now that's a nice teaching, and we can take it back. It's easy to do. Take it back to how does, when Krishna appears in the world, he spiritualizes the place. So where Krishna is, and worship of Krishna is, the place is spiritual. It's right in Bhagavad Gita, Brahmarpanam, Brahmahavir, Brahmagnav, Brahmanahutam, that there's the different elements that are part of the process of yajna or sacrifice to Vishnu that become as spiritual as the fire, the performer, the ingredients, and etc. Everything becomes fully spiritual. Or its spiritual quality becomes restored. Or one no longer sees it as material. So we shouldn't see the veena of Narada Muni as material, given to him by Krishna, and the sound of that veena is also, that is, he, Narada, and his activities and everything about him, he's invested with the Lord's Bhakti Shakti. So he and everything he does and his paraphernalia is all transcendental. Shakti Vaishyavatar. And specifically, amongst the various Shaktis of the Lord, he is invested with Bhakti Shakti to distribute Bhakti. Nice service, huh? Nice service. Final verse from the chapter 6. It is personally experienced by me, Narada speaking to Vyasa, that those who are always full of cares and anxieties, due to desiring contact of the senses with their objects, can cross the ocean of nescience on the most suitable boat, the constant chanting of the transcendental activities of the personality of Godhead. It's now 7:30. I have a bunch more to say, but I think it's probably better if I pause out. Maybe you can do what I wanted to say at another time. There are ways in which Narada was the recipient of the Lord's mercy besides what we've already heard, and how he gave bhakti to so many others. It's right in the Bhagavatam and other places. So it's a nice focus. He's a Shakti Vaishnavatar. So speaking about him is as good as speaking about the Supreme Lord, because he's invested with the Lord's Bhakti Shakti. He's as fully spiritual as the Lord is spiritual. So stepping back, thank you all for enduring this long-winded class. The purpose that I wanted to accomplish was take the teachings from the 9 stages of bhakti as given by Rupa Goswami in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, and expanded upon by Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, the 9 stages of bhakti, illustrated by the life of Narada Muni. I mean, there's many other things in that book, but one of the things it does is the 9. It's not just Rupa Goswami pulled some terms out of the air and made it up. There's shastras to support it, and here's the shastra supported. And behind those teachings, there's the Upanishads, and there's Lord Chaitanya, and so forth and so on. And so we're given. Who are we? We're like people trying to live our lives out in Kali Yuga, and some gift is being given to us. A nice gift is being given to us, the gift of bhakti, and to understand it, like A to Z. Shri Shri Radha Shama Sundar. I'll just say one additional thing and invite discussion. Something that I experience a lot in discussions amongst devotees is the how-to question. How to this, how to that, how to the other. And my standard answer, also expand it a little bit, the standard answer is sadhu sangha, but I'll expand it a little bit is, if you understand clearly how bhakti begins, because that's the morning topic tomorrow, how does bhakti begin? If you understand how bhakti begins, you've got an answer to your question. How to? Because you just take that and you take it to a more mature stage. Because the teaching of bhakti is, you don't need something else. It does something that's not something that causes it, and it's not something that can stop it. And the cause of bhakti and the mature stage of bhakti, the sadhana and the sadhya are the same. There's no changing horses. It's one thing, seamless, just a seed that grows. Kijai. So the how-to is go back and revisit how your bhakti began. Be really clear how your bhakti began in principle. I mean, there's persons and circumstances, but how it began, and understand the principle and amplify the principle. That's the how-to answer. Understanding, then you apply the same principles, and just in a more mature way, in a more mature stage of life. So understanding this topic is an important topic for those of us that are cultivating Krishna Bhakti or Bhagavat Bhakti or devotional service. And we're all at different stages, and that's fine. And whatever the stage is, the principles remain the same. Okay, let's see if there's some discussion. I see a hand in the back, way in the back. Who's going to be the runner? There he goes. He would sit way in the back.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. Thank you for the nice class. In the description, it was said that Narada Muni entered Lord Narayana when he was breathing in, along with Brahma for many millions of years. So my question...
The night of Brahma.
Right. For one night of Brahma. So my question is, during this stage, now he is already perfected soul. Is he still active?
There's some service for him.
There's service. I couldn't hear much.
Yes, I said there is some service for him. He was being given an opportunity to do some service during the next day of Brahma. So according to the Lord's plan for him to do some service during the next day of Brahma, to become a Shakti avatar from a maidservant son and from a fallen Gandharva, he now has some nice service to do. So he appears as a son of Lord Brahma on the next day of Brahma. Is there a problem? What's the problem?
And there's no problem, Maharaj. I understood the part when the next day happens, he has got service to do. My question is, during the night, is there some service?
Oh, he's asleep. I don't know, maybe he was chanting in his sleep, I don't know.
The reason I asked the question is because, Maharaj, it is said that conditioned souls are in deep sleep.
But he's not a conditioned soul,
right.
so that doesn't apply to him.
So that's why I was wondering what...
His state, pure devotees like Narada or others pure devotees, if the Lord has them planned for them service, they do whatever the Lord plans. That's what they do. So if the state, supposing you're a pure devotee, someday you become a pure devotee, or supposing there's a pure devotee and they have some open heart surgery or something, that they have some anesthesia, what happens to them during the anesthetized state? Consciousness, but anesthesia, the susupti is an anesthesia-like state. So they're in the state of susupti where consciousness is existing but not functioning. It's covered. And then when anesthesia wears off, then it's business as usual.
Thank you, Maharaj.
So that's, what does a soul do? What did Narada do during that night of Brahma? Is your question. Yes? He's in susupti state. What do souls do in the susupti state? They're in deep sleep. Consciousness is there, pure devotee consciousness is there, but covered. It's not manifest.
Thank you, Maharaj.
And which is different than for a conditioned soul. Okay, somebody else? Oh, look at this, way up front. Oh, there's one in the back. There's something in the back. We'll get to you.
Hare Krishna Guru Maharaj. I was curious about what made Narada Muni in his birth as the son of a maidservant special, in the sense that Narada Muni is a very exalted personality, a very confidential service for Lord Krishna. And so, do we know anything about the sages that kind of awakened or reawakened that bhakti in him? Because it also seems like the student exceeded the teacher. And so, how would that, how to reconcile that idea of the position that or the service he attained in his next life in relation to those that reawakened that bhakti?
I'm not sure what your question is. Let me say back what I think your question is. In his previous life, he was what he was, because he disclosed to Yudhisthira what he was. He's a fallen Gandharva, cursed to become a Shudra, not beautiful. So it was. So now here's this little boy, son of a maidservant, Shudra. But he's carrying with him something from his previous life. Samskaras or vasanas or, impressions. And those impressions became very quickly ignited in the association of sadhus. So it happened quickly because there was inclination, and he was very receptive. And he didn't do foolishly, he didn't speak needlessly, etc., etc., etc. He became fire quickly. The spark became a fire quickly, in the association of fire. Does that answer your question? Not exactly.
I think so. So his, let's say, spiritual reawakening is
inherent.
It's inherent and somewhat independent of, let's say, the spiritual journey of the sages that were that catalyst.
Oh yeah, but it's, yes, and his narration is depicted by our acharyas as a Vaidhi sadhana bhakti model. He became influenced by, rather than spontaneously, he became influenced by. So it's very important. So we're also in that category. We're influenced by persons who are perfected souls or elevated souls. And at different rates, one can progress, you and I or someone, or Narada, and he advanced very quickly because he was receptive and he didn't do distracting and disruptive things. And the association was very elevated, harmonic convergence. And he became elevated quickly with prior propensities. Anyway, I don't think I can do better than that. Anything else? Yes? Okay. Hey, Subal's got a microphone already. Go ahead, Subal.
Thank you, Guru Maharaj. Anyway, just this very wonderful, the presentation. I'm looking forward for tomorrow. Trying to right now process the information of the 14 stages. And I had a similar question that Yashwananda Prabhu had, and it was answered, so thank you. In 4 months, basically the child obtained 12 stages up to prema. That's what I understood. I don't know if I got that right.
Just add another 4 months and you got it right.
So
8 months.
8 months.
Yeah.
Which is still quite short.
Yeah, so, but some people in the audience are very precise.
Yeah. So in 8 months he achieved these 12 stages up to prema. The understanding we usually have is that prema is the ultimate stage, but now after that he went to 2 more stages but the Lord, when he spoke to Narada, he said, you're not going to see me anymore, so you'll be able to develop this hankering which will eliminate any type of material, whatever.
Affinity. Yeah.
Which one will think that that's already finished, it's already gone. He already said that he had no envy, he had no...
Okay, so what's your point?
So the question is, because this is a model for a sadhaka...
It's principle-based, it's not chronological. Our timeline is different than his. That's one point. And he was exceptional, which is another way of saying the timeline is different. But the principles covered are standard, and he covered those principles quickly because he's a unique candidate, which was, something similar to the prior question. But he is a unique candidate. But the principles are there. So don't worry about the timeline. Stay fixed on the principles. Okay.
Thank you.
He's happy now. Good. Amara?
Hare Krishna, Guru Maharaj. Thank you very much for this class. Maharaj, I learned from Narada Muni's life one observation that the circumstances in his life were getting very, very favorable every step. for Bhakti. And I wanted to ask that was his submission was the main quality that he exhibited in, like just being simple and submissive?
You want to put a pin on the main. I'm reluctant to go there.
Mm-hmm.
You can do that in your drama presentations. I know she's thinking how to make a skit out of this. But it's not quite like that.
Okay.
Not quite like that. There's stages of it. The preliminary, one way to say, the preliminary is faith, and faith grew, and it grew, and it grew. Another way of saying, in other words, Vishwanath writes, another way of describing these 9 stages of bhakti is faith growing into different stages. So if you want to put a pin on something, it's where it starts, Adav Shraddha.
Yes.
So then how does that come? That's a nice question. So, but it's not just submission, it's both submission and receiving something. So this is a nice question, which is going to be part of our topic tomorrow morning. Is bhakti inherent or inherited? There's some fellow wrote a book about it.
Yes, I was coming from, like, we pray to Krishna for favorable circumstances and to enhance our attraction for him. And somewhere submission is slackening, that's what I was thinking, but...
You're speaking for yourself.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
If there's clouds in the sky, it blocks the sun, light. That's correct. But there's varieties of clouds. They're not only one kind of cloud.
Right. Just one quick question.
Yeah, go ahead. You got the microphone.
So one line wrote in the slides that he ignoring all the formalities of material world. So can you kindly shed some light on this?
Yeah, he wasn't. His bhakti had become so strong that he was not restricted by convention. It's not to say he was, flaunting convention, but he wasn't restricted by it. It's something like, there's a very well-known, could you stop playing your mridanga on your knees? Distracting. There's a verse it's cited again and again where if a devotee is on this platform of ecstatic devotional service, they may not perform something or may do something that's not to be done, and there's no reaction for that because they're fixed in enthusiasm in serving the Supreme Lord. The phrase that's used is running with the eyes closed. They'll never trip and fall. That's what the verse says in the Bhagavatam. And the commentary says, when one comes to the stage that Narada was in, the attraction for the personality of God, it is so strong, formalities may not be observed, that's okay. And some persons may think that's a transgression. You're not observing our formalities, or dharmic formalities. Things are to be done, things are not to be done. And so he's beyond that boundary, or that guardrail.
Thank you.
Okay. Something up front over here. Okay, very good. There's the 2 hands right next to each other.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. In this 14 stages, surrendering to Guru comes before Nanatani Vritti. I'm just trying to understand, at that stage of having a lot of anartha in my life, what is that surrendering to Guru looks like?
Well, here's one thing important to understand. These are not, it's a lens through which to look at things, and it's Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur's lens, which is slightly different than a modification of, which is allowed, a modification of the Acharya who he looked up to the most since his childhood, Rupa Goswami, is a different model. So it's a different way of looking at things, and these 9 or 14, they're not buckets. It's not that when this bucket gets filled, then you can move over and start working on the next bucket. When that buckets get filled, you move to the next bucket. They're not buckets. They may be going simultaneously. So your question is, what does it look like? It depends on each of us. It's going to be a little different, but the principle doesn't change from one person to another person. The taking shelter of Guru Padashraya, the taking shelter of spiritual master, it's not like that has to happen fully before Anartha Vritti even starts. As soon as Bhakti begins, as soon as Sadhu Sangha begins, Bhakti begins. As soon as Bhajana Kriya begins, there's Anartha Vritti begins. So don't think of it in a yardstick kind of a way or a bucket kind of a way. There's stages that unfold differently, and it's explicitly in Madhurya Kandamani. For different persons, they unfold differently in different paces for different persons.
So does that mean surrendering is also a gradual process?
Yeah, congratulations. Faith is, and everything is. It's gradual. Now, step back. If it's all gradual, why are we doing all this anyways? Because you just do bhakti and Haribol. We had this discussion yesterday. Sri Radhika was asking this question yesterday about the science versus from the heart. Not exactly that, but... And from the heart is also a science. Love is also a science. Wait a minute, let's not make sterilized love. It's something other than unsterilizable. But there's an unfolding of it. Bhakti has its way of unfolding. Take a seed and be a horticulturist, and how do you cultivate a seed from a seed to something you want? So that the horticulturist can tell you. There are stages of growing the seed into a flower and fruit. Same. It's a science of bhakti. That's all about love or prema, from the seed stage up to the mature stage. And some of the terminology, we'll hear it tomorrow, some of the terminology that's used in this stage is applicable in that stage, is applicable in that stage, because it's one process. It's just a more mature stage of the same thing that's less mature, more mature, fully mature. Same thing, just mature degrees of maturity. Does that de-scientize the whole thing? No, there's stages. And it's good for us to have a backdrop to know, how's it going? Am I headed in the right direction? How do I know I'm headed in the right direction? There's a science to it. Okay?
This is the first time I'm hearing the 6 stages before Anartha and everything, the mercy of devotee.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with it either. I'm including it. I'm interrupting you. I'm including it because it's an add-on to something that I already did, for 13 parts in Houston over Thanksgiving weekend. Standard is the 9. And this is the same person that wrote this 9 has now 14. How audacious. He's completely faithful to Rupa Goswami, and he's adding. I never heard it before either. You're welcome to the club. We form a little club.
I'm very glad to see this because personally for me, continuing on the previous discussion, the Anartha Nivritti phase seems to be long drawn till Brahma goes to sleep, at least for me. So it's good for me to identify, because Anartha Nivritti happens and it bewilders when sometimes some of the bigger Anarthas come, it bewilders, so it is good to have this list to go back and see what stage am I in.
Oh, if you want that, Madhurya Kandamani has charts and lists, and right up to the stage where sadhana bhakti ends and bhava bhakti begins. There's still some anarthas, and that distinguishes from the sadhana stage from the bhava stage.
So that was more a comment. I did have a request. Towards the end of your presentation, you made this point, understand how bhakti began in principle and amplify the principle, kind of, in an answer to all the how-to questions.
Yes.
Could you repeat that?
Sure, I will. I'll be happy to. Because I say it all the time anyway, so I don't mind saying it. I'll say it again. How do I become more attentive? How to? One of the topics that I had planned to speak about, I've kind of revised the plan, but I'm chanting, I'm reading, very little progress. I've been chanting and reading for X number of years, and I don't feel that I'm making much progress compared to what I think I should be doing. Why? What to do? The how-to question. There's a nice answer that's in Madhurya Kandamani, but a principle is, if you understand how bhakti begins, go to a mode of goodness space, a reflective space, and consider, how did bhakti begin? What's the principles by which bhakti begins? 1, 2, 3. Adaushradha, sadhusanga, bhajana kriya. Repeat. Adaushradha. So I need to look at how bhakti begins, and then qualitatively do each one a little better. And there are ways to but if I don't if I keep doing the same thing, become complacent, and treat my sadhana bhakti as mechanical sadhana, whatever that might look like, for different people it's a little different. And the submission slackens, here's her submission word again. Submission slackens and it becomes routine. The bhakti just kind of evaporated or went away somewhere. And so I'm not making much advancement because the bhakti principle is not vibrant, vital, alive. So how did bhakti begin? And you go revisit it. So and then you be more attentive to those principles. The preliminary faith, what is it? The sadhusanga, what is it? The bhajana kriya, what is it? And qualitatively do those with attention and with absorption and with the purpose of pleasing Krishna. We'll hear about it tomorrow morning. The intention that Krishna should be pleased. That's the bhakti principle. And then that's revisit how bhakti begins, and that can give you the answer, any one of us, the answer to how to. In 2 words, it's just sadhusanga. But then you unpack sadhusanga and it becomes something, what I just said. And then you unpack it further.
Thank you.
Okay. I think the closing says That's the end of class. Time for prasadam. And I see some devotees in the audience that I haven't seen in a long time. I won't say names because I might miss somebody and somebody will feel left out. So, but those of you that came from a long distance to be with us, thank you very much. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.